It's standard for individuals to err, yet her error left me utterly astounded. She aimed to manipulate me into a situation that would lead to my incarceration, all orchestrated by her lover. The most disheartening aspect is that I hadn't wronged these people in any way. They merely sought to destroy my life. Yet, I was no simple man. Reality seemed distorted as I settled onto the cold floor of my bedroom. To say I was tired would be an understatement. A mere week ago, I wouldn't have envisioned myself in this predicament, performing these actions. As I sat there, I could feel the roughness of the carpet against my damp hands. We had invested significantly in renovating the bedroom a few years prior. The room boasted a durable underlay and high-quality Australian wool carpet. It was unfortunate that this once prized piece of our home was being damaged now. For a moment, I closed my eyes, attempting to dissipate the mental fog enveloping me. What was happening? I questioned myself. I'm above such schemes. Upon reopening my eyes, I beheld a grand king-sized bed with a wooden frame. In the next instant, Kelly emerged before me. As we were engaged in lovemaking, a wave of dread washed over me, knowing that experience would never recur. The vents had spiraled out of control. My hands flew to my face, and in my madness, I sneered as the warm, wet blood marred my skin. Lowering my arms, I drenched the carpet further with a liquid oozing from me. The world seemed to blur, but my eyes swiftly detected the glimmer of the half-empty whiskey bottle lying on the bed alongside an empty pill bottle. After consuming the pills and downing the whiskey, I had neglected to replace the cap. Now, the room reeked of alcohol. I chuckled bitterly and shrugged, but a sudden panic crossed my mind. The letters. Swiftly turning my head, I confirmed they were still there. My untidy handwriting adorned the front of each envelope. They remained on the bedside table, not on the mattress where I feared the open bottle might damage them. I acknowledged the potential of my letters falling into the wrong hands, but quickly pushed that concern aside. The logical part of me understood that I wouldn't be here to fret over it. What did it matter? I suppressed a bout of nausea, trying not to retch. I didn't want to throw up. Why? As I closed my eyes once more, I pondered why things had to unfold this way. Why did I make this choice? Yes, there were people I would miss, though I questioned if they would miss me. Yes, my daughter would despise me for choosing this path, but I believe she already detested me, discarding me and feeling disgust toward me this past week, and I could no longer endure it. I didn't want the agony any longer. Even now, as the life-sustaining fluid coursed through my veins drained away, damaging the carpet beneath me, the pain and misery persisted. A week ago, the person I used to be would have scolded me for this action. Once upon a time, I wouldn't have resorted to such actions, yet I was no longer that person. Shattered, rejected, despised, I saw no other path than to comply with their demands. I gritted my teeth against the agony in my wrists, but the pills and alcohol made it a numb, muted pain. As I neared eternal rest, my life didn't replay before me. There were no white tunnels or ominous steps hidden in the darkness. I was taken aback. I suppose I had anticipated something. Not exactly, though. Aware that time was running out, terror gripped me. My mind wrestled to form rational thoughts. It was over. Despite my brain's desperate hold on life, I couldn't halt the impending doom. I felt absurd. I wanted to live. In a desperate attempt to surmount my folly, I tried to move, but found myself collapsing onto the floor, bereft of strength as the darkness ultimately consumed me. A week passed, I heartily chuckled as I whirled my daughter, Grace, within our suburban dwelling in downtown Perth, Australia. She was 19 and John, her boyfriend, had proposed to her the prior night. Admittedly, I had foreseen this moment. John had sought my approval privately, which I bestowed without a second thought. The duo has been together since 8th grade, spending scarcely any weekends apart during their courtship. As Grace narrated the proposal to my spouse, Kelly, and me, she was gleeful in her retelling. John had embarked her on a quest for hidden treasures across town, culminating beneath a tree in Kings Park where he proposed. Upon hearing the news from them in our kitchen, the following day, I embraced her and twirled her as if she were still 5 years old. My heart swelled with joy for them. Although young, their bond struck me as enduring. If any budding couple could succeed in today's world, it was they. I grasped my daughter's hand once more, beaming as I marveled at the engagement ring. "It's lovely, Gracie," I remarked, glancing towards John. "You certainly made a discerning selection." My wife, Kelly, let out a snort from across the kitchen counter. At 42, Kelly was still an alluring woman to me with her rich brunette hair, brown eyes, and envied tan complexion. We all looked at her in response to my praise. "You should share some of that credit," my wife suggested, lifting a wine glass. "Although you granted your approval, I was the one who assisted John in selecting it." This remark took me by surprise, causing John to redden. "Mom, that's unwarranted," Grace said before turning to her fiancé. "It's okay, baby. I adore it, and I know you made the ultimate decision." No further words were spoken, but I must confess I felt a tinge of embarrassment due to Kelly's comment. For years, I had never witnessed such disrespectful and out-of-character behavior from my wife, a scene that left everyone around us mortified. Yet, upon contemplation, Kelly's recent strange behavior was becoming more apparent. While no specific incident stood out at the moment, there were subtle indicators, her words and actions hinting at the kind, loving woman I knew, only to be replaced by the one who had embarrassed us. The evening remained lively as we continued to celebrate the newly engaged couple. Eventually, Grace and John departed after savoring the apple crumble and vanilla custard I had prepared earlier in the day. They lived in a small one-bedroom apartment we were helping them lease while they studied and commenced their careers. That night, as Kelly and I settled into bed, I remained silent, but on Sunday morning, that unwelcome comment continued to haunt my thoughts. As we slowly awakened and made love, I couldn't help but ponder it. After that, I observed joy on her face, but it swiftly transformed. She disengaged from me and hurried into the bathroom, leaving me incomplete. I was taken aback. "Ah, Kelly," I called out. "What's happening?" She retorted from the bathroom, slightly agitated. "What's going on?" I inquired. There was a pause before she responded. "I seem to be regaining consciousness. Take care of yourself." A short while later, Kelly re-emerged, glanced at me, smiled, and departed. It took around 30 minutes for me to regain my composure. I was utterly stunned. I showered and shaved, and when I entered the kitchen, Kelly was already gone. She had merely left a note indicating she was leaving. Suddenly, rage surged within me. Throughout all the years I knew Kelly, she had never disrespected me as she did this morning. I couldn't fathom what was happening with my spouse. While brewing coffee, a persistent thought nagged me. Could she be unfaithful? Even as I sipped my coffee, lost in my thoughts, Roger, a close friend, phoned. "Hey Bart, what's new?" he asked cheerily. I replied with a casual greeting, hiding my inner turmoil. "Bart, you seem troubled," he observed. For the next 10 minutes, I shared my concerns with Roger, who found amusement in my worries. "If she's cheating, there isn't much you can do," he said. "Divorce is 50-50, and given that she doesn't work, she might end up taking you for everything," he added. I responded angrily, "That's unhelpful." He replied, "I wasn't trying to be." "I was just stating facts," he countered, showing little concern. "Perhaps we can discuss it at work tomorrow," I suggested, after mentioning the Pembroke Project report. "Sounds good," he agreed, lacking enthusiasm. Roger wasn't merely a friend. We shared the same workplace, with him being a program manager and me as a senior engineer. Over time, we made an effective team. I would create solutions, while he managed budgets and schedules. Despite the passing of Sunday, Kelly arrived home late at night. She didn't utter a word even though she was aware I was awake. The following morning, Kelly attempted to gently rouse me. She seemed hopeful, yet I pushed her aside in the end. "This can't be happening, Kelly," I said as I got out of bed. "Are we abandoning intimacy?" she questioned, looking at me incredulously. I stared back at her and began dressing. "I won't have any contact with you after your disrespect last weekend," I said. Pausing, I hesitated. "What if you're cheating on me?" she inquired, standing near me. She declared there's no remedy, addressing me with a slight smirk. "Go back to bed." Attempting to coax me, she said, I know you and I could use some unwinding. Disbelief etched across my face. I shook my head. Who is this stranger? I countered forcefully. This scenario isn't happening, I asserted, expressing her disrespect. In response, she hurled back a derisive remark, storming off to pick up a toy from the nightstand. Lying down on the bed, she glared at me defiantly, taunting and jeering. You could be here with me, darling, she purred seductively. It could have been you, not this plaything. Shaking my head, I departed the room. For the first time in our 21 years of marriage, I felt repulsed by my wife's words and actions. When I exited the house, her mocking echoed within me, labeling me a feeble man and coward. That morning at work, I was preoccupied. My assistant, Myra, immediately recognized it. Barth, are you okay? She questioned with worry in her expression. Myra Brown, a longtime employee of the company for a decade, was known for her witty humor, hinting at getting the job out of pity. She appeared for the interview with a black eye, having recently escaped an abusive relationship, leaving only her clothes and her one-year-old daughter, Tilly. Besides this brief incident during the interview, Myra proved to be a strong contender for the position. She typically dressed conservatively but had captivating physical attributes, including platinum blonde hair reaching down to her waist and a physique that seemed almost weightless. She was hard to ignore. Myra also possessed an aura that drew attention, with a well-balanced figure and natural grace that was difficult to overlook. On a personal note, I had occasionally found myself appreciating her, but never acted upon it. In spite of a past ordeal stemming from an abusive former boyfriend that led to an unwanted pregnancy, Myra demonstrated remarkable intelligence and quick wit, matching the rigors of our work. Impressed by her abilities, the firm's owner hired her, designating her to aid me in project delivery, as they thought her skills were being wasted in a reception position. I respected Myra not just for her compassion towards others and steadfast moral values, but also for her handling of friendships, cordial initially, then unyielding if crossed. Various people had indeed faced consequences for underestimating her, viewing her as merely an amiable yet trivial woman. As I deliberated on discussing my issues with Myra, I finally chose transparency. During my discourse, Myra's countenance shifted from thoughtful to a serious scowl, and by the end, her anger was manifest, a blush spreading up her neck. After narrating my story, I couldn't help but feel dejected, as my suspicion of my wife's infidelity seemed confirmed. I'm bewildered, Myra. I never anticipated this scenario, I confessed sadly. Suddenly, your hand touched my shoulder. Physical interaction between us had always been scarce during our work years together. I met your gaze, seeing the compassion in your eyes. Well, you started, you need to address the Pembroke meeting first. I've just received the schedule, and there are issues about the materials used in the structure, specifically regarding the pipe and concrete. I refocused on your words, bringing myself back to the present. The information startled me. Why haven't I been informed about this before? Roger has said nothing on the matter. I responded, my mind racing with thoughts about the structures, architectural designs, and quantities I had carefully planned. You looked troubled. I'm not sure why this hasn't been discussed, Bart. You didn't seem aware. I've just looked over the schedule, and it's concerning. Just as I was pondering it, Roger popped up at my office. Are you set, pal? He asked brightly. Roger, what's the issue with pipes and concrete on the Pembroke project? I questioned in a hushed tone, bracing myself for our upcoming meeting. He brushed it aside. Don't fret about it. We'll work it out. Roger, I pressed. I usually like to be informed before client meetings. No problem, he replied casually. The gathering felt like an ambush as we walked in. The Pembroke owners were already seated. In the past, our encounters had been friendly, but their faces grew tense as I ran through our progress. What about the budget excesses concerning pipes and concrete in the Northeast? Peter, the CEO, questioned. I shot a look at Roger, but he remained silent, putting the focus on me. I'll need to look into it, I replied, taken aback. Previously, our reports suggested everything was within expected norms. When Peter challenged me, a sense of dread filled him. This can't be accurate. Why have I been approving requisition requests totaling over $200,000 for additional concrete and pipes in the past 3 months? I returned his gaze, speechless. I cast a glance at Roger, whose countenance was indecipherable. He reached for a file and stood up. "Excuse us for a moment, gentlemen," Roger said, gesturing towards me. "Bart, let's step out and clarify this." I accompanied Roger down the hall into another room where our supervisor, Clarence, was already seated. "So, what did they say?" Clarence asked as we settled. Without delay, Roger handed a file to Clarence. They probed about the undelivered materials. As expected, he responded. Anger flashed in Clarence's eyes as he faced me. For the first time during our long-standing collaboration, he unleashed his wrath upon me. "Bartholomew, what's your explanation for this situation?" The older man, Clarence, essentially snapped at me. I was taken aback by his forceful tone and the hostile gaze he directed towards me. "I find myself at a loss for words, sir. Last week's reports suggested everything was progressing smoothly with no further resources required. I have no recollection of these signed requisitions, let alone endorsing them," I responded to my clearly agitated supervisor. Noticing the situation escalating, he scrutinized me for a moment before taking a folder handed to him by Roger. "So that's your account of events," Clarence stated flatly. "Sir?" I questioned, then cast a glance at Roger, who looked solemn. "Bartholomew, here are requisition forms totaling $26,000. The payments were made to an account in your name." "Really, Bartholomew? This is how you choose to repay me after all these years?" Clarence almost shouted. The meeting deteriorated from there. Clarence and Roger alternated accusing me, unconcerned by my claims of innocence. The Human Resources Department intervened, leading to my immediate termination for alleged fraud. Clarence warned he was contacting the police, and to make matters worse, Myra, a coworker, was also being dismissed due to similar accusations. As I exited with my meager possessions, Roger sneered at me surreptitiously. In the parking lot, I encountered Myra, weeping openly beside her car. Security guards kept watch to prevent our re-entry into the building. "Myra, are you all right?" I asked. She turned sharply toward me. "You contemptible Bartholomew, embezzling $200,000. How could you do this?" she exclaimed. "I relied on you, and because of you, I lost my job." The distraught woman reproached me. "Myra, I swear it wasn't me." "You denied it?" She momentarily hesitated, a scoff surfacing before they escorted me away. "Roger presented the authorization forms bearing your signature." "I recognize that signature." "How is that possible?" She fixed me with a glare, her eyes brimming with nothing but malice. She didn't want to listen to my claim of innocence, and I deduced that tale about Kelly was likely another false accusation, suggesting her dishonesty. "Do you genuinely believe I'm unaware of the way you gaze at me when you think I'm not watching?" A second bout of raw fury took me aback. "In my decade-long colleague, I detest you. You lie, deceive, and swipe, and then have the audacity to inquire about my well-being. Disappear, Bart." In all our years of working together, I had never heard her curse. Her words left me stunned. Before I could retort, she struck me forcefully across the face. "You wrecked my professional reputation. Now I won't receive favorable recommendations, and even worse, I'm stained by your dishonesty. May it have been worth it to you, traitor." As I stood there, shocked, my face burning from the impact of her slap, Myra glared at me for a moment before driving away without uttering another word. Upon returning home, Kelly was waiting for me. "So, the unfaithful husband returns," she sneered contemptuously. At that moment, I didn't understand it, but later on, I would come to see that Kelly sounded pleased rather than upset or concerned. "What in the world, Kelly? I wasn't involved." "I have no clue what's happening," I replied, feeling despondent, perplexed, and close to breaking down. She sneered at me again. "Who cares, Bart? I'm leaving you." I had never seen such loathing in her eyes before, except perhaps the look Myra gave me earlier. A tap sounded on the door. "It's for you," she said, her eyes still trained on me. With no pause, I swung open the door to greet the suited man. Mr. Bartholomew Otter, he inquired. I merely nodded. You have been served, he declared, extending a thick manila envelope towards me before departing. Inside, I found divorce papers. Kelly, are you getting a divorce? My world was further disrupted. Kelly picked up on my deepening despair and chortled at my distress. Just how uninformed can you be? She taunted. After all, this is a divorce. She casually mentioned, in case you hadn't noticed, I've been dating someone for the past 6 months. He fills the void where you don't exist. He's fantastic, and let's not forget he's loaded, she scoffed, regarding me with contempt. As for you, you've lost your job, family, friends, and it seems prison time for fraud is imminent. She offered a fleeting, sadistic glance filled with satisfaction. Over the recent months, I've become increasingly aware that your behavior has grown more blatant. I was perplexed as to why I hadn't noticed before. You're pathetic, Bart. The only thing you had was your way with words. My new partner lacks your skill and doesn't understand how you manage it, but he provides me with things you never could. So you're confessing to infidelity, I countered, my anger audible. Kelly chuckled. Yes, it's always been about me. I deserve everything. Haven't you figured that out? She cast a fleeting, sad look at me. For a brief moment, we had shared many good years. The look faded, and her harsh demeanor resurfaced. But your time with me is over, Bart. I'm moving on. Kelly moved closer as my world disintegrated. Let me clarify, Bart. I want the house and most of our possessions because you're going to prison, so sign the papers. You're granted a week to vacate, but if you persist beyond that time frame, a restraining order will be added to your troubles. Your lover's residence will become yours then, given its smaller size, though attempting to approach me afterward could result in charges of stalking. Already facing incarceration, avoid escalating the situation further. In shame and solitude, I sank into a chair as Kelly approached, observing the handprint Myra had inflicted earlier. She glimpsed at my red cheek and sneered. At least that woman received her due retribution. With those words, she departed, leaving me in quiet desolation, bereft of any solace or drink. The subsequent day mirrored the first as I awaited some resolution. 20 times I called Grace, only to hear her voicemail. Eventually, she answered. What is it? My daughter said brusquely. I was about to say, I began, but Grace interrupted me, sounding cold and unforgiving. Spare me, Dad. My deceit, lies, infidelity with an assistant, betrayal of your mother, and embezzling $200,000 were revealed to her by my ex-wife. You've caused immense disappointment in many lives with this. I was left speechless for a moment before responding, but Grace cut me off again before I could. Let me be clear, she said angrily over the phone. John and I want no contact with you. If you're not incarcerated when we marry, don't show up. I won't allow someone like you near me on my wedding day who could potentially harm our family. My mother informed me, go to jail, Dad. Suffer your sentence and stay away from us. Unfortunately, if I have to say it, don't come if you're not in prison for the wedding. She declared she'd seek another to escort her at the altar, leaving me speechless with tears flowing. Dad, are you paying heed? Do you comprehend your actions? I said nothing, only crying loudly. Farewell, Dad. You're now non-existent in my life. Don't try to contact me again, ever. Her words echoed as she ended the call abruptly. With that, I crumpled to the floor and wept. 2 days later, law enforcement knocked on my door, arrested me, and questioned me. The officers disregarded any queries about my innocence and instead peppered me with questions concerning the location of the funds, the identities of my associates, and the span of my fraudulent acts at my previous job. Eventually, they let me go, urging me to stay in town for a court appearance the next week. Returned home, I assessed the familiar surroundings, pictures of Kelly, Grace, and me on the walls, pieces of art we'd collected, trophies earned by Grace from school sports. The atmosphere that once buzzed with memories and joy now felt empty and void. The previous week had been a tumultuous blur. Deep within, I knew there were significant elements of this predicament that remained unclear to me. Though conscious of my innocence, I felt detached and bewildered. My wife departed, my daughter distanced herself, my job was lost, my assistant implicated me, and a close friend deserted me without hesitation. The select phone calls I answered were from former friends voicing their disapproval of me. They consistently conveyed they desired no further contact with me. I had become a source of contamination, and simply existing in the same space as me was unbearable. I stepped into the bedroom, shattered and uncertain about my next step. As an engineer, I was accustomed to resolving issues, yet I found myself struggling to pinpoint the problem at hand. Following a shower, I descended and consumed a sandwich made with old bread and jam, its flavor reminiscent of cardboard, intensifying my already dismal state. If only Grace hadn't disrupted my life. My gaze lingered on the table before me. There lay sleeping pills that Kelly used and an unopened bottle of American honey whiskey. For the first time, a dark thought invaded my mind concerning the consequences if I ingested both. I shook my head. This wasn't the answer. I merely required some time. The following morning, I was presented with another challenge. An injunction prohibited me from approaching Kelly, Grace, John, or Roger within 100 meters. Additionally, I was instructed to vacate the premises by the following Monday. Strangely, Roger was also included in the injunction, which seemed peculiar. Why Roger? My gut feeling indicated something was amiss. Blast it! I bellowed into emptiness, consumed by fury and a profound sense of deception. In a moment of impulse, I texted him, "Moron, it's all your fault. Can you even call yourself a friend? I'll track you down and make you pay." No reply came. Yet, within 30 minutes, the same pair of detectives who had apprehended me earlier reappeared. They berated me for breaking the restraining order by contacting Roger. They showed no concern for my justifications or desire to hear my perspective. In their eyes, I was merely the antagonist. They mandated that I vacate the house by Sunday and informed me of my court date set for Monday. They warned me that a detective would be stationed across the street surveilling me for the next 24 hours. I was firmly advised against leaving the house unless to gather my belongings after a heated argument with the detectives. Subsequently, I gave in to the temptation of opening a bottle of whiskey. In 10 minutes, I soothed my grief with 3 alcoholic beverages, followed by scribbling messages to Kelly, Grace, and Myra. In the letter to Kelly, I expressed my dismay and called her a deceitful woman, wishing harsh retribution upon her for her actions towards me. I poured all my bitterness onto the paper before spitting on it and sealing it in an envelope. To Grace, I conveyed my sadness about her not asking if the accusations against me were true. I assured her that I was innocent of those allegations. In fact, it was her mother who had been unfaithful to me. I denied taking any money and hinted that her belief otherwise might suggest she needs to mature and question where she's getting such misinformation from. I advised Grace to give John her full love and to remember me kindly once things sorted out. In conclusion, I asked Myra to prevent Roger from accompanying her down the aisle at our wedding, since he had deceived me. Again, my letter was stained with tears as I placed it in its envelope. In the letter to Myra, I offered an apology. Firstly, I clarified that none of this predicament was her fault. Then, I detailed what I suspected about Roger's deceit and its impact on us both, hinting at his possible involvement with my wife. I regretted if my shy looks had ever made her uneasy, clarifying they were mere admiring glances directed at such an exceptional colleague. I underlined my deep admiration for her and apologized if my actions may have diminished that respect. Lastly, I confessed my feelings of being trapped and asked Myra, as time passed, if she could find it in her heart to forgive me when her anger had subsided. With due care, I sealed each letter in its envelope, addressed them to their intended recipients, and placed them on the bedside table. Retrieved a whiskey bottle and sleeping pills, proceeding upstairs. A heavy breath escaped me as I arranged the letters. Spontaneously, I scribbled a warning on a post-it for the detectives to examine Roger's activities to reveal the truth. I suggested they perform their duty in future encounters rather than pushing an innocent man towards this fate. Subsequently, I sought solace in a relaxing hot shower in the bathroom, consuming more whiskey and swallowing all the pills. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I realized this wasn't my usual behavior, yet I followed a premeditated scheme, a way out of the turmoil. If the world no longer required me, I would depart from it myself. My straight razor stood ready on the counter, awaiting its final assignment. I took another sip of whiskey, then discarded the bottle and empty pill box onto the bed. Returning to the room with an odd sense of peace, I meticulously donned dress pants, casual shoes, and a formal shirt. Externally by the bathroom, I crumpled, feeling the alcohol and pills kicking in. In my grasp, a razor gleamed ominously as I pondered its destructive potential. The pain would be fleeting, but the freedom enduring. They showed no interest in me, refused to listen, so I'd make sure they wouldn't have to anymore. It was later revealed that Detective David Arkwright had thwarted my suicide attempt. Assigned to watch my house that night, he was parked in an unmarked vehicle across the street. When Mrs. Hawkins, our seemingly oblivious neighbor, dropped by out of concern due to unusual activity over the week, she met with Detective Light at my front door. Their attempts to gain entry failed, leading him to use his key and search the house. In the bedroom, he found me unconscious and bleeding. An ambulance soon arrived, and my home swiftly became a crime scene. Last week, the initial fortunate event transpired. I was nearly unconscious when discovered, and instinctive body reactions saved me from further damage by causing vomiting. Guided by detective light, forensic experts were summoned. They confiscated the whiskey, pill bottles, letters, and hidden cameras disguised within a hard drive in the laundry cupboard unbeknownst to me. After 3 days, I regained consciousness to find myself miraculously alive. "Where am I managed to ask, speaking to a nurse who seemed quite attractive. She whispered, "Hollywood Private Hospital." She warned, "Your companion has been awake all night and just fell asleep." "Companion?" I questioned faintly, raising an eyebrow. It struck me that everyone had deserted me. She responded, directing my attention to a disheveled Myra sleeping in an oversized hospital-style faux leather chair. "It's Myra," I murmured, feeling a wave of relief. As soon as she woke up and realized I was awake, she moved towards me, taking my hands. "What were you thinking?" she asked sharply, yet her touch was soft. Her eyes, red from crying, hinted at unshed tears. I avoided eye contact. I believed it was the only solution. I started to explain, feeling ashamed. She scoffed. "Did you truly believe ending your life was the solution, Bartholomew? I've known you for over a decade. Giving up isn't characteristic of you." "What were you thinking?" She repeated her question, her voice filled with worry as we sat in silence, the hum of machines being the only sound. She waited for my response. "Myra, I apologize for everything. Everyone, from Myra to you and Grace, I couldn't bear it. None of the actions were mine, and no one asked for them. I felt cornered. My wife told me to die, my daughter disowned me, my friend betrayed me, and I hurt and let you down. I wasn't in control. In a brief moment of vulnerability, I did something that appeared justified at the time. I shouldn't be here," I murmured sadly. She softly sat at the foot of the bed, giving me a thoughtful nod. "I'm sorry too, Bart," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was angry and upset. I didn't stop to think that you were innocent. I was wrong." "It's fine, Myra," I reassured her gently. "No, it isn't fine. Your being here and feeling like I contributed to this shows me how much I can't forgive myself," she cried. "It's okay, Myra. It's okay," I repeated. I closed my eyes, worn out. For a few moments, we stayed quiet, yet Myra clung tightly to my hand. A doctor eventually entered the room, his gaze shifting to my chart as I blinked open my eyes. "Greetings, Mr. Other. It's nice to see you conscious," he said. I casually responded, "Still alive." This response seemed to catch him off guard, and Myra followed suit. "Let's aim to keep it that way," he replied, disregarding my somber comment. For the subsequent minutes, he meticulously examined me while Myra looked on silently. He unwrapped the bandages from my wrists to scrutinize the stitches, causing a sharp intake of breath from Myra at the sight of my wounds. Subsequently, he monitored my blood pressure and adjusted the Roman 4 drip in my arm, primarily administering saline. The doctor clarified, "Upon arrival, You required 2 transfusions due to excessive bleeding. The saline solution will aid in your body's healing process and hydration. For a while, you should restrict your diet due to recent events. Upon arrival, it was necessary to empty your stomach to ensure no remaining pills were present, which might have caused discomfort. You may experience some itching afterward, but this is temporary. Additionally, there's a detective who has been trying to speak with you since you woke up. He's made several visits already. It appears Myra has been in contact with him. He confirmed this as he spoke. I mentioned the necessity of rest and limiting movement while looking at the bed. After rewrapping your wrists, he departed, leaving Myra and me alone. Our eyes avoided each other. "I presume you've come due to my letter?" I asked tentatively. She shook her head. "The letter hasn't been shown to me yet, but Detective Roundlight informed me about it," her voice quivering as tears brimmed in her eyes. "My relative working in the administration here spotted your name on the critical care list. You told me you had been admitted to the hospital following an attempt to end your life." Myra's voice faltered as she said this. I could not bring myself to look at her, overwhelmed by guilt. Myra, visibly shaken, went on, "Bart, I was feeling quite low already. After our argument, I was enraged, but in truth, I knew you were not involved in the embezzlement. We've worked together for years, Bart. If anyone should have known whether you were capable of something like stealing, it would be me. In my anger, I should have taken a moment to think. Had I done so, I would have understood that you were being framed. When Morris, my cousin, called me and said, 'You know, he said you weren't there, and I knew you didn't commit those terrible acts,' Myra exclaimed, 'Bart, I am so sorry, from the bottom of my heart, so incredibly sorry.' Myra wept, her head on my chest, tears seeping through my hospital gown. She continued to apologize, saying she had almost lost her best friend. After some moments, she tenderly cleaned her face, attempting to disengage her hand, yet I held on tightly. With her free hand, she softly dabbed tears from my eyes, and we exchanged a hesitant smile. Inhaling deeply, Myra resumed, "As I pondered over it, I couldn't fathom you performing such an act. You always cherished your profession. However, upon seeing the signed documents presented by Roger, I was enraged with you. This caused me to tense up and look elsewhere. 'Wasn't it Roger who framed you?' she inquired softly. I affirmed this with a nod. 'I believe so,' was my response. I can't substantiate it, but the pieces seem to fit his avoidance of the overawns, the conveniently obtained documents that were unknown to me, and I suspect he is the one having an affair with Kelly," I continued, momentarily closing my eyes while still clinging to Myra's hand. "I apologize too, Myra. I never envisioned Roger or Kelly would draw you into causing me harm, but I am powerless. All the evidence implicates me. I can't prove my innocence. Due to the circumstances, I took the actions I did." A different voice broke the silence. "I understand you can't do such things. Your accusers have cleverly manipulated evidence to portray you as a criminal mastermind. Yet, authentic criminals who evade justice for large amounts don't behave like you." A bulky man resembling a rugby player entered the room with an air of self-assurance, once my own. "Mr. Other, I am Detective David Romlight. It was Mrs. Hawkins and I who discovered you. I'm glad to see you recovering," he said. I shrugged nonchalantly. "I apologize, Detective, but I expect you'll be able to apprehend me in a few days once they release me," I responded bitterly. Myra squeezed my hand tighter at the mention. Detective Romlight then started speaking about the matter. Both Myra and I turned our attention to him as he raked his fingers through his hair. "Upon taking over your case, I've been going over details carefully, and certain aspects aren't matching up. Are you open to another round of questioning?" "I apparently don't have much else to lose," I replied flatly. Suddenly, Myra interjected, "What about getting him a lawyer?" The detective sighed and acknowledged, "Yes, he can have a lawyer. However, we're not allowed to discuss it until it's brought up. But yes, it would be wise for him to have one." Myra nodded firmly, assuring, "I'll arrange that." As she departed momentarily, making a call on her phone, both the detective and I watched her leave. Despite her potential anger towards me due to my actions, She was undeniably attractive, and we were both aware of it. "She has feelings for you," Detective Round commented. I laughed. "She's been with me for 10 years. Given our recent hardships, she's being overly protective right now. I suspect there's more to it. In confidence, I've examined your communications and conversed with her. If your wife encounters her, she'll prove formidable," he remarked, casting a glance towards the door she had just left through. "She genuinely cares about you, Mr. Other, and at this moment, you require supporters." Pausing, I queried him, expressing my doubts with a questioning expression. He returned my gaze. "Frankly, I'm unsure if you should be informing me of this, given that I'm investigating you." He chuckled. "Indeed, Mr. Other. However, I sense there is more to your case than the other two assumed. Moreover, I overheard your comments earlier. You believe yourself innocent, don't you?" Displaying my bandaged wrists, I affirmed my innocence. "Absolutely, I'm innocent. I would never misappropriate funds from a place I once cherished working at." "Very well," he nodded as Myra re-entered the room. "My second cousin, Regan Brown, will be Bart's legal representative," she declared. Detective Round smiled and passed Myra a card. "I am acquainted with Miss Brown," he said. "She's skilled." He guaranteed she would attend to your needs, Mr. Other. Turning to Myra, he said, "Request your cousin to get in touch with me once she talks with Mr. Other." "As soon as possible," was my response. We conversed for a few more minutes before he left. "That's unusual," I noted upon his departure. "Yes, police aren't usually friendly or on your side," Myra concurred. After a tense silence, I inquired, "Who is looking after Tilly while you've been here?" "My mom has her at the moment," Myra replied. She then delved into her bag, retrieved a drawing, and presented it to me. It was a folded paper containing a crayon drawing of a hospital and an ambulance. Inside the hospital, I was pictured in bed with "Get well soon" penned in a child's handwriting. I fought back a few tears, responding softly, "Thank you." "No news from Grace yet?" Myra shook her head negatively. "She hasn't responded to my attempts at contact," she said mournfully. We talked softly for nearly 45 minutes before Myra's second cousin Regan arrived. After the introductions, Myra departed, leaving me with Regan. While Myra was strikingly blonde, Regan had sandy brown hair, but their family resemblance was apparent if viewed together. "She's always liked you," Regan mentioned during our chat. I scoffed, recalling Detective Round's similar comment earlier. As my former colleague, this was surprising to me. I countered her remark, and this time Regan snorted. "Men, as usual, show a lack of understanding." I chuckled, then added, "Even my soon-to-be ex-wife would attest that I'm oblivious." My laughter held no real amusement. She smiled sadly and said, "Don't worry about it. I've already spoken to Detective Round on the way here, and he seems to be on your side. It's unusual, but don't dismiss it outright. You've shared some information that has sparked a few thoughts in me. Rest assured, these thoughts are mine alone. It seems you trusted and loved someone who might not have deserved it." Regan looked at your bandages with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Bart," she said. "From what I've heard from Myra over the years, she has a great deal of respect for you. And from recent events, it appears she feels remorseful about her actions towards you more than losing her job. She truly cares about you." As I was about to respond, Regan raised her hand. "Please don't worry," she said. "I will handle both your cases, the unfair dismissal and divorce. If my assumptions are correct, events are likely to unfold rapidly. Meanwhile, focus on your recovery. However, I urgently need the divorce papers your soon-to-be ex-wife provided you. As your representative, what are your preferences?" My countenance grew somber. "I desire all that is obtainable," I said softly, the resentment barely concealed. Regan discerned my simmering rage. "Kelly and Roger seemingly betrayed me, likely pocketing a substantial portion of the firm's funds, accusing me instead. You have my unbridled permission to inflict utter devastation upon them." She chuckled before winking. "No mercy, and don't be concerned about the damage." "Understood." I appreciated my new attorney. Regan lingered a while longer, querying further about the circumstances leading up to what she termed my self-inflicted injury, then departed, reassuring me that the situation was being managed. She hinted at arranging a formal police interview in a few days upon my release from the hospital. The ensuing days were relatively quiet compared to the preceding week. I mainly occupied myself with hospital routines, undergoing frequent examinations by doctors and nurses. Without my phone left at home, I was unable to contact anyone, not that I thought they would want to speak with me anyway. The next day, Myra arrived bearing an aged paperback Dan Simmons's Damien. I chuckled upon receiving it. It was a book I had appreciated years ago. As she sat down in a chair beside my bed with her own book, Pride and Prejudice, I questioned the purpose of her visit. "Foolish man," she said, shaking her head but smiling, "I'm here to look after you." We spent the day conversing, sharing our recent experiences. At noon, given the doctor's approval, she ventured out and returned with a roast beef roll smothered in gravy and chips for me, while she enjoyed a chicken wrap herself. Despite the discomfort in my wrists, I was starting to feel more like myself again. On the second afternoon, Myra came home in the middle of the day after being away in the morning. At that instant, the doctors had taken out 4 ribs from my arm and told me I would be discharged the following morning, contingent on favorable blood test results. Turning to Myra, I admitted, "I don't know where to go. I don't even possess a phone or wallet to book a hotel room, and I can't return home." Myra gave me an encouraging smile. "In reference to home, Reagan secured a court order to retrieve some of your personal items. Somehow, she was able to get my phone, wallet, a few changes of clothes, my laptop, iPad, and shaving kit. I was amazed by her generosity. Thank you. Now I can at least try to find somewhere to stay." She was my only friend in the world. "What is it?" I asked, noticing her concerned expression. She hesitated before saying, "You were correct about Roger and Kelly. When Reagan and I arrived with an officer to collect your belongings, they were both found in a compromising position. It appears they've moved in together and weren't anticipating guests." She said softly to Bart, "I'm sorry." I sighed. "It's all right, Myra," I replied. "Not really, but thank you for your honesty." She answered my question with a smile. "At first, they yelled at me to leave, threatening arrest if I didn't comply with the court order. The officer intervened, allowing me entry into your room to gather your possessions." Her voice trembled. "Bart," she paused, pointing out the bloodstain on the carpet. "The stain is still there. Had I not been here when you arrived, I would have been terrified. Promise me you'll never do something like that again." I held up my hands in surrender. "I promise," I said solemnly. The next day, after a shower and shave at the hospital, Myra greeted me as I checked out. We walked out together, holding hands. She guided me to her car, and we traveled a short distance until we reached a group of condominiums near Kings Park. "Myra, what's the reason for this?" I inquired, recognizing our destination. "You can't stay at my place," I added, understanding our destination. "Don't be foolish. There's no need to spend money on a hotel. You can use the guest room for a few days instead," Myra said. "Reagan was due to join us here this afternoon," she added. "Given her interest in your case, you wouldn't want to miss it," Myra said with a smile. I had previously visited Myra's house a few times. It was a compact, 2-story dwelling with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a simple kitchen, and a relaxing living room. With just Myra, Tilly, and occasional visits from her mother, they managed the space efficiently. Having collaborated with Myra for so long, I knew she had nearly paid off the small mortgage on the house. Although she seemed lively, Myra wasn't fond of parties, and most of her assets went towards caring for Tilly, whom she cherished deeply. I carried my luggage into her house, where she showed me the guest room, bathroom, and the rest of the property prior to Reagan's arrival. Reagan arrived about an hour later. Upon entering, she sat down, retrieved multiple folders from her bag, and maintained a professional demeanor. "Bartholomew," she stated seriously, "you are indeed a fortunate man." I swallowed nervously as it became clear that my wife and supposed friend had almost managed to swindle me out of everything. As of now, all your bank accounts, including your savings and the account into which the missing funds were misdirected, are frozen. It seems that over the past few months, your friend Roger learned to forge your signature. Approximately 2 months ago, both he and your wife went to a local bank where they opened an account using your name. Myra and I shared a look as Reagan continued her explanation. I have obtained video evidence proving it was them who did this. Additionally, measures have been taken to revoke their passports and instigate lawsuits against them for fraud and mental anguish. Their situation is dire. My lawyer informed us with a smile on her face, adding that she has also initiated legal actions against your previous employer for wrongful termination for both of you. She expects all proceedings to be underway by the end of the week. I've conversed with Detective Wright, and we are scheduled for a formal interview with him tomorrow morning. She looked at me reassuringly. This is routine procedure, she said. Just stay close to my guidance, and you'll be all right. She indicated that your wife and associate would likely be apprehended soon. For the subsequent hour, we went over the details and signed numerous documents. Reagan assured me that all accusations would be dropped by tomorrow. After she departed, I spent a brief period organizing my clothing in my room and arranging my toiletries in the bathroom. Afternoon was spent discussing future events with Myra, followed by days without using my phone. Upon Myra leaving for school pickup, my phone buzzed with numerous missed calls and messages, mostly from Kelly scolding me to conclude the divorce or risk jail time. Mysterious calls from a previous employer over the last 2 days also appeared. Regrettably, no communication was received from Grace. Upon their return home, Myra and Tilly brought energy and joy that alleviated my concerns. The 11-year-old shared stories of her school day, friends, and her own proud declarations about me at the hospital during recovery. She radiated enthusiasm, and I must admit, every moment was precious. While dinner was being prepared by Myra, I spent time with Tilly. Together, we completed her homework and practiced reading from her schoolbook. She was an exceptional reader, and our reading sessions were enjoyable. Tilly bore a striking resemblance to Myra, and I knew she would win hearts as she grew older too. Her childlike innocence was something I hoped she would preserve for as long as possible. Following dinner and bath time, the trio relaxed in front of the television before bedtime. Enthusiastic about the latest episodes of a children's series called Blue Eye, Tilly shared them with me. To my surprise, I found myself enjoying it just as much as she did. At bedtime, Tilly requested that I tuck her in and gave me a hug that almost made me tear up. Expressing her happiness that I was feeling better, she let go of me. With tears in my eyes, I traded places with Myra, who said goodnight to Tilly. It had been a long time since I felt such pure love, yet the pain from Tilly accidentally exposing my situation with Grace still lingered. Tilly's sympathetic worry about my emotions served as an explosive blow against the severance of ties with Grace. Subsequently, Myra and I settled on the couch for a discussion. Frequently, she clutched my hand, and upon retiring, she offered me a soothing embrace and assured me that things would improve. The following day, we attended an interview. Detective Wright clarified that all accusations against me were dismissed. Shortly thereafter, the evening news announced that Kelly and Roger were wanted for fraud and identity theft allegations, yet they continued to evade capture. Later that night, Grace made her initial attempt to call, but I opted to send it to voicemail. I wasn't psychologically prepared to communicate with her at that point. The subsequent day was marked by mixed emotions. Grace contacted me repeatedly and even texted messages encouraging a reply, but I remained unwilling to converse with her yet. It was only following my recuperation that she began to exhibit worry. In a fit of anger, she dismissed me impulsively, disregarding Myra's efforts to reach her when I was hospitalized. After the revelation about her mother and Roger's involvement became public, she suddenly sought conversation. My daughter might face repercussions for some time. That night, I had a horrific dream. I found myself at home, moments after discovering a razor, when Kelly and Roger entered playfully on my bed while I needed aid. Meanwhile, Myra, Grace, and John stood in the doorway, jeering me as I lay powerless. I jolted awake, sweating profusely and shouting loudly. Before I could comprehend what was transpiring, Myra appeared, her eyes wide with concern and a worried smile. Even Tilly was standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. I hid my face with my hands and wept. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't." Over time, I managed to regain my composure, and they both climbed onto my bed. Myra was positioned over me on one side, while Tilly sat on the other. I felt Myra encircle my neck in a tight embrace, and I was soothed by Tilly's words. "It's okay, Uncle Bart. You had a distressing dream." It's something that happens occasionally, with Mom and Tilly promising to stay until I fall asleep. Despite my efforts, sleep eluded me. After a while, I felt Tilly drifting off, her small hand resting on my abdomen, but Myra continued to watch over me. "Are you all right, Bart?" she inquired with sincere concern in her tone, maintaining the embrace like a protective mother. I hesitated briefly. "No, Myra, I'm sorry, but I don't think so," was my response. It was a dream about that fateful night when I couldn't complete the thought. Yet, it seemed as if Myra understood without my uttering the words because she leaned in and kissed my cheek before resting her head on my shoulder. As previously stated, Myra is a captivating woman in her mid-30s, possessing an irresistible allure that could set sparks flying with just a glance. Since Kelly abandoned me, it felt like only yesterday. I've had no inappropriate thoughts, yet I reacted when her body touched mine. If not for the child sleeping beside us, my actions might have been different. But I'm grateful I didn't act, especially as I felt Myra's tears wetting my neck. "What are we going to do, Bart?" she whispered tearfully. "It's unfair. You don't deserve this." Her voice was filled with distress and sympathy towards me. I comforted her, wrapping an arm around her and pulling her near, making sure not to disturb Tilly, who snuggled beside me, softly snoring. "We'll find a solution. Everything will be fine." In that instant, a sense of stability came back to me. Myra's concern and compassion for my situation made me feel like myself again, for the first time since that night. I held both Myra and Tilly close until the sun rose, marking the start of a new day. The following morning, I received affectionate hugs from both women. We had breakfast together, and then Myra took Tilly to school. I sought help by starting to find a counselor, as I knew I needed assistance. By the time Myra arrived, I had already made several calls seeking support. Myra welcomed me warmly, her smile soon turning serious. Bart, can we have a chat?" she asked, guiding me towards the couch. I nodded, assuming I knew what we would discuss. "It's okay, Myra," I reassured her. "I understand. Last night was difficult. With Tilly here, it's not convenient. If I wake up shouting, I'll find another place." Her eyes widened, and she quickly grasped my hands, a look of alarm crossing her face. "No, Bart, that's not the case," she said, taking a deep breath. "On the contrary, Bart, I'm unsure how to express this, but I must." I stared at Myra, her expression both moving and perplexing. "Bart, I'm in love with you," Myra suddenly confessed. Apologetically, I stammered. "I confessed something," I said. Her response was a repetition, more subdued now. "Yes, I've known for some time." A blush graced her cheeks. I sat back, studying her face as she smiled at me softly. "My apologies, Bart, but I can't hold it in any longer," Myra spoke, her words weighing heavy. "Upon learning you were in the hospital, I panicked. I hurried here as fast as possible. I felt wretched for my anger earlier, swearing to myself I wouldn't express my true feelings. But then, you were near death, and following your ordeal with your wife and closest friend, you came here. I thought I didn't need to speak up because you were with Tilly and me. I thought you would figure it out eventually, but—" "Myra, why reveal this now?" she was asked. "What prompted this confession?" I inquired. She let out a soft laugh, tinged with sadness. You oblivious soul. Last night's events took place. Seeing you in pain tore at my heart. It seemed unnecessary because we were together with Tilly, but you were there for me when I needed you, and I fell asleep in your arms. I wished to alleviate your suffering. I had deep feelings for you, Bart. I can't hide it any longer." Myra glanced swiftly at me. "And the reason, it's always been about you. Haven't you ever noticed that I never date? She asked, tilting her head curiously. Yes, I acknowledged, following suit. But I thought it was because of Tilly, I suggested. That's part of it, Myra paused. However, Bart, the truth is no one has ever compared to you in my eyes. Myra tilted her head towards me with curiosity and smiled. You should know, she began, since we started working together, you've always treated me equally. You take time to explain everything, you are kind to everyone, helping them learn from their mistakes. And regarding Tilly, you're so friendly. You make her feel special when you help with homework or read together. She never knew her father, but she sees you as her own father. Observe how she approached to console you when you were in distress last night. However, Myra, I started objecting. She held up her hand to halt me. A week ago, when our world collapsed, you handled it all yourself. You didn't shout or get enraged. You never treated me harshly, even when I was upset or short-tempered. Myra reddened. You are an exceptional individual. Bartholomew is unique. I cherish you for that, among numerous other reasons. If Kelly is foolish enough to let you go, I will whisk you away with such affection that, in a month, you won't even recall her name. She moved towards me and seated herself beside me, bending down to kiss me. Shortly after, I enveloped her in my embrace. Time appeared to stand still. It wasn't long before I felt her yearning. Ultimately, she drew back, her eyes brimming with intense, carnal desire. Are you ready, Bart? Will you claim me? Myra inquired. I had just been offered marriage by one of the most beautiful women I've ever encountered. In truth, I had previously entertained thoughts about her, and when opportunity came knocking, it happened swiftly. It was clear that Kelly and I no longer shared a future. The revelation of Myra's love for me was striking. I sensed she comprehended my inner turmoil, yet remained silent, guiding me to her bedroom. Upon arrival, she turned and kissed me. The following hours were blissful before we dozed off. In another realm, I found myself in a parallel situation where Kelly and Roger were engaged intimately. Once more, I felt the despair, but then came the unexpected entrance of Myra, soothing my wounds and leading me away from the troubling spectacle. We awoke to the sound of an alarm clock. I trembled and perspired, yet remained silent in her firm grasp. While dressing, I related the dream to her. Worried, Myra led me to pick up Tilly from school, and later, after some weeks, Roger and Kelly were apprehended. After the accusations against me were dismissed, we learned about the police's attention towards them. In a fluster, they escaped from Perth to Adelaide, but were held by Australian customs as they attempted to leave the country. It took West Australian police 2 months to return them to Perth. During this period, my bond with Myra became stronger. From that initial night on, I moved into her bedroom, now our shared space. I confess, I felt revitalized, as if in my 20s once more. We made love nearly every night, and when we were together, it seemed like her body, mind, and soul belonged entirely to me. Consequently, I found myself deeply falling for her. Upon the return of Roger and Kelly to Perth, I recognized that Myra was correct. I could barely recall my encounters with Kelly and had no desire to remember them. Similar to myself, Myra only had one individual, her inconsistent boyfriend, who perished a month following Roger and Kelly's return to Perth. In court, Myra and I confronted Reagan against them. Roger consistently avoided eye contact with me, even when I served as a witness. His actions led to a 15-year prison sentence for him. Contrastingly, Kelly maintained unwavering eye contact during the trial. As events unfolded in court, it was revealed that Roger was the main orchestrator of all activities, including manipulating Kelly and arranging the fraud. Unexpectedly, Kelly received a 20-year sentence for her involvement. She was deemed an accessory to the fraud and faced additional charges related to mental abuse due to her actions against me, with evidence sourced from covert cameras she had set up on Roger's behalf. This resulted in an extended 5-year prison term for Kelly. The judge granted our divorce immediately following the verdict. Renee expressed dividing our savings upon receiving my divorce papers from Kelly. He also shared his readiness to immediately sell the house and share the earnings, as I had no desire to stay in a place marred by such distressing events. Reagan disclosed that I consented to serve as trustee for Kelly's funds until she completed her sentence, though it took much persuasion from Reagan for me to agree. This gesture showed my partial willingness to reconcile and significantly reduce the usual disputes during divorces. The court ruled that Roger and Kelly must commence their sentences promptly. During the closing arguments, Kelly's lawyer asked if I would spend an hour with her before she was imprisoned, which I hesitantly agreed to under the watchful eyes of the courtroom. In the interview room, following the court session's conclusion, Kelly arrived dressed in her formal attire. The furnishings of the room were modest, yet the table was fastened and the chairs were fitted with restraints to prevent movement. Despite these precautions, Kelly seemed dejected and defeated, mirroring my feelings of betrayal by her actions. She sat with a stooped posture, avoiding eye contact. Unlike in the courtroom, the prison escort informed us that they would remain outside, waiting for our signal to return. There was no urgency. For several minutes, we remained silent, marking the first time since Kelly had requested my assistance, an act I subsequently attempted but ultimately failed to carry out. "I'm sorry, Bart," she whispered softly, focusing on her hands. I was surprised by her initiative in starting the conversation and her initial words being an apology, a stark contrast from our previous, more confrontational exchange. "Kelly, is that you?" I inquired, my voice tinged with resentment. Her eyes brimmed with tears but didn't fall. "Yes, Bart, I'm really sorry." Anticipating dismissal of her apology, I held back, waiting instead. "Let me talk first, Bart, then you can judge me," Kelly said sorrowfully. I relaxed in my chair, indicating for her to proceed. "Thank you," she whispered, making direct eye contact for the first time since entering the room. "Understand this, Bart, I'm genuinely remorseful. I don't understand why, but something took hold of me. For years, I loved you. I do even now, despite my actions. But what hurts more is that I knew how deeply you cherished me. You were the ideal husband and partner, yet one day I felt adrift." Her gaze fell, focusing on her hands before speaking again. "In the weeks following this feeling of being lost, matters worsened. Her agitation towards you escalated as she realized you still cared for her amidst her inner struggles. The presence of Roger during the project heightened her discomfort as he discerned her distress. A month later, the affair commenced. Roger was relentless in his pursuit and knew how to exploit her weaknesses. She had remained devoted to you, but her vulnerabilities were used against her, leading to their intimate moments. He utilized her guilt to carry out his scheme. Likely unbeknownst to you, Roger harbored envy towards your leadership skills, feeling overshadowed by you consistently. He devised a plan to deceive a client into paying a significant sum for something non-existent, ultimately implicating you in the theft. To her shame, they both collaborated against you, initiating this deceit and manipulation from the start. They opened an account in your name and systematically orchestrated your downfall. You were conscious of our unfaltering trust and love towards you, and by the final stage, Roger figured that with you incarcerated, he could employ his funds, our savings, and the ill-gotten gains to commence anew in another nation, eluding penalties. We harbored the belief we could escape repercussions. If discovered, Kelly clarified, her head drooping at her confession. "For the time being," I countered, concealing my fury, "neither of you factored in the destruction you were wreaking on me." She nodded sorrowfully. "In the beginning, I resisted, but Roger was indefatigable. He persistently wore me down until I unwillingly consented. For our scheme to prosper, you had to be so shattered that you wouldn't question it. You came close to succeeding," I interjected. "If not for Detective Romblight and Myra, you might have pulled off the deception." We remained silent for a while. Then Kelly softly inquired, "May I see them?" I comprehended her intent and gradually laid my arms on the table, palms up. Kelly gasped, tears welling as she beheld my scars. She hesitated, then withdrew her hands. I kept a composed exterior, though inside a tempest of emotions swirled from anger to shame and a faint echo of lingering affection despite her actions. Acknowledging it was difficult, perhaps I couldn't hide these feelings as Kelly looked up at me intensely. "I'm sorry." "Sorry, Bart. I truly regret what drove you to such painful thoughts." She paused. I'll take the 20-year sentence without appeal. After what I did to you, it's what I deserve. I nodded, feeling relieved that she would accept justice without protest. She looked at me again. Bart, Kelly said, looking straight into my eyes. You were never inferior in bed compared to Roger, who thought he was skilled but was actually inadequate. You were incredible. It was always about him. He didn't care about my satisfaction like you did. I have no justification for what I did to you that last morning. I was wrong. We fell into a brief silence. Are we talking about you and Myra? She questioned delicately. Affirmative, I responded, a hint of uncertainty in my voice. She gave a faint smile. That's good. She has harbored feelings for you for quite some time. That bit of information was shared by my former spouse casually. I replied, taken aback. I was taken aback by the depth of emotion in her tone as she continued, Allow her to love you, Bart. Let her mend the wounds I've caused you. Tears streamed down her face, yet she didn't look away from me. I am not entitled to offer guidance, but she cares for you deeply. Unlike me, she would never deceive you. She has cherished you silently for years, never attempting to take you from someone else. I faltered at the first hurdle. She possesses everything that I lack, my ex-wife lamented. Kelly, I hesitated, unsure of what to say next. Don't worry, she said, wiping her tears with her sleeve. I'll be all right. I consented to your conditions. I was taken aback by how considerate you were and how well you managed my affairs while I was in prison. You surpassed what I had envisioned, yet you left me with more than I ever expected. If only you'd shared your feelings with me earlier, perhaps we might have spared ourselves this ordeal. However, I am striving to put everything behind me. I'm filled with fury, desiring to lash out at you. Yet I can't, Kelly. It was my own actions that were destructive. A pause ensued between us. Bart, Kelly spoke again, meeting my gaze. I apologize for the harm I caused you. You deserve nothing less than the best from me. In truth, I share equal, if not greater, blame for pushing you. I shall always carry the shame. Your letter was read by me, and your words resonated true. I will pay the price for my actions, but I am thankful to God that you are still alive. My jaw clenched momentarily as emotions within me raged. How could Kelly express such remorse now? How can she shoulder responsibility and attempt to alleviate the resentment and pain? I clung to the belief that it wasn't right, so I moved on to another topic. I proposed taking charge of our financial matters as a show of respect for our past. It will provide you with enough to begin anew if you decide to, I offered, unsuccessfully concealing my feelings. Kelly recognized my feeble attempt at disguise, yet she complied with the change in topic, responding with a bitterness-laced laugh. By then, I might be in my 60s, she said, hoping for enough funds to retire. 60 isn't that old, I countered. Maintain your strength, and you'll likely carry on into your 80s. We exchanged a few words about her financial management plans. It offered us some relief, but I could sense she wished to discuss another matter. Have we spoken to Grace? She inquired tentatively. I shook my head. Grace essentially severed ties with me, claiming I was no more, and trusting every falsehood you and your partner told her. That conversation left me shattered. I looked at Kelly, and she winced at the pain and grief reflected in my eyes. Kelly didn't hesitate to believe I was guilty, never giving me the chance to prove otherwise. She dismissed me without a moment's hesitation. After that phone call, I struggled to speak, turning away so Kelly wouldn't see my tears as I cried silently. If I had looked back, I would have seen Kelly crying too. She instinctively understood what I couldn't bring myself to say. Our conversation continued with my back towards Kelly. During my hospital stay, Myra tried to contact her, but there was no response. Mimicking Kelly's earlier action, I wiped my face on my sleeve, then turned to sit down again just as Kelly was trying to wipe away her tears. I'm sorry, Bart, Kelly murmured, her voice filled with pain. A large portion of what happened was orchestrated by Roger and me. It's a source of everlasting regret that we manipulated Grace into turning against you. I nodded, feeling a surge of anger rise in my eyes as Kelly admitted her involvement, lowering her head in shame. I was about to express my anger towards her for damaging our relationship with our daughter, but she was already aware of the harm she'd caused. Truthfully, Kelly spoke sadly, Grace has also cut me off from her life. I haven't been reprimanded so sternly since my childhood, yet I know I deserved it and more. Suddenly, Kelly interjected urgently, replacing her sorrow with a stronger emotion. Our daughter needs you. She's fearful and acting out towards everyone at the moment. They've been arguing constantly, and you're aware that's not typical for them. In a softer voice, she added, I'm concerned about her well-being. This is my fault, but I can't fix it. I know she feels remorseful towards you, and your silence only exacerbates the situation. Kelly paused for a moment before saying, I understand I have no right to ask anything of you, meeting my gaze as she nervously fidgeted with her hands. But could you possibly find it in your heart to forgive Grace? Our daughter needs at least one of her parents. Despite not having a prison term looming over me, the remorse for what I've caused you and turning Grace against you would have haunted me relentlessly. It's for the best that you are the one to collect Grace. If something had happened to you, I can't imagine what she might have done. My ex-wife, Kelly, implored, Bart, at least take care of our daughter. I pondered my reply. Your request is challenging. You caused me significant pain, yet you were not just my spouse, but also a part of my family. When Grace rejected me, saying she wanted nothing to do with me, it was more agonizing than your actions against me. I yearned for reconciliation with her, but the hurt, Bart, the pain inflicted by my family and our daughter, I'm unsure how to move past it. Kelly acknowledged my pain with a sorrowful nod. Kelly, I want you to understand, despite my efforts to avoid resentment towards you, it's challenging. I'm seeking guidance, but it's tough not to retaliate. As for Grace, I can't promise anything immediate, but I will think about speaking with her soon. You could see the impact of our conversation on her. She seemed older. With little more to add, she rose. Bart, she said quietly, I acknowledge my words may lack credibility now, but I will repeat. I'm sorry for everything I've caused you. There are no excuses, and I can never truly make amends. I'll serve my sentence, and although forgiveness might not be forthcoming, I hope for it. You might not trust me, but I continue to love you. Although our love may have slipped from my sight, it remains true. Kelly's words faded, lines forming on her face. We stood in an awkward silence, tears flowing down Kelly's cheeks again as she reached for the door, knocked, and was let in by her escort. Before departing, she looked back at me. Myra and Bart, I love you. Express to them the affection I negligently forfeited. Savor a beautiful life and take pride. You have individuals who hold you in deep regard. Recall, even in your most difficult times, there's always someone prepared to uplift you. This is what she conveyed before leaving Bart. With a heavy heart, Kelly said, I'm proud of the person you're becoming. Farewell, my dear, as she exited. In that instant, she left the room behind. I revisited our dialogue. It was devoid of quarrels. Instead, Kelly acknowledged her role and her words. As I departed the room myself, I observed a path of tears on the tiled floor where Kelly had walked. For a fleeting moment, I grieved for what we once shared, then turned and moved in a different direction. I was escorted from the restricted zone and into the public gallery, where my spirits brightened upon seeing Myra eagerly awaiting me. Despite the somber atmosphere, my former assistant, now girlfriend, radiated beauty. Her skirt emphasized her physique, while her blouse subtly accentuated her charm. Myra's golden locks fell past her shoulders almost to her mid-back. She blended seamlessly into my arms, bestowing a gentle kiss upon mine. Was everything okay? She queried. Yes, I replied. It was unexpected. Initially, I anticipated a torrent of excuses and blame aimed at me, but she accepted much of the blame herself and displayed an unexpected amount of remorse. How does that sit with you? Myra inquired. Pausing, I continued to hold Myra. To be honest, I'm still enraged at both Roger and her. However, unlike Roger, I also feel sympathy for her. She acknowledges the havoc she has wreaked in her life and is now bearing the consequences. It seems that even Grace has severed ties with Kelly due to her actions. Myra pondered thoughtfully. Subsequently, she hesitated before looking at me. "There's something I should tell you," she began, then glanced at me, continuing, "John and Grace are presently at the cafe across the street for the next few hours if you wish to converse. It's clear Grace has caused you distress, but she wants to meet you. Seeing your distraught state, you wondered if talking to her was advisable, and Myra agreed. She suggested, 'I believe it's necessary, my dear. A part of your heart aches that only Grace can mend. However, know that I'll be with you as long as needed. I'll support you fiercely, like Mama Bear.' You expressed your love for her, and she reciprocated before we drew attention while walking away. Spotting our daughter and her fiancé in the cafe upon entry, Myra and I were immediately reunited. As we neared their table, Grace appeared conflicted between escaping and enveloping me in a hug. I leaned into the embrace, subtly opening my arms. Grace burrowed against me, leaving my shirt wet with her tears. "I'm sorry, Dad," she repeated for several minutes. I cast a glance at Myra, who offered a knowing smile, and John, who looked perplexed. Eventually, after some time, I delicately disentangled her, and we took our seats. We each ordered drinks and a light meal, and I chose to initiate the conversation. "I've just spoken with your mom," I murmured. Grace acknowledged it. "I heard, Dad. I'm sorry. It's just—" I put up my hand to halt her. It was my turn now. "I understand, Grace. I know you're sorry. Your mother explained a lot, but you need to grasp the impact your words had on me." In that instant, I felt deserted by someone I believed would remain steadfast beside me, regardless of the situation. What stung the most was your failure to inquire about my innocence. Grace's embarrassment became apparent on her face as she blushed deeply. "Father, She gathered her thoughts before continuing. "I need to express something." She seemed to speak to herself rather than others. I observed John remain silent, yet offered a comforting squeeze of her hand. "Father, I apologize. I should have given you the opportunity to respond. I should have allowed you to clarify, but I didn't. I can't pin my actions on Roger or Mother, but they constantly reminded me of your mistakes, your jail time, and your infidelity." She glanced at Myra. "Mother, aided by Roger, kept insisting that you were deceitful. Their arguments had been convincing. By the time you called about being in the hospital, I was so enraged that I said many things." John nodded in understanding, implying this had likely caused their disagreements. "Mom and Roger continued to speak negatively about you, accusing you of collaborating with Myra in some scheme. Grace frequently glanced between you and Myra. They insinuated that your actions were merely attempts to garner attention due to your involvement in this supposed conspiracy. Is it true, Dad?" Grace couldn't complete the question. Neither of us could provide an answer. I nodded and showed her my scars by lifting my wrists. "I'm sorry, Gracie," I whispered. "Yes, I was at a very low point in my life and saw no way out." At my confession, Grace burst into tears again, hiding her face in her hands. Myra moved closer to me, and our emotions brimmed close to the surface. For a brief moment, there was silence, and John looked at us. John acknowledged the gravity of the situation, but requested a moment for Grace to collect herself, while he seemed to be hinting at something positive. He asked if it was correct that something good had come from all this, pointing at us embracing. Grace appeared puzzled and eventually asked, "Dad, you and Myra?" John confirmed this, clarifying that it wasn't an affair as she had been led to believe. He explained that Myra had been by his side when he was in the hospital and that they had reconciled. Myra showed her affection, wrapping her arms around him and giving him a quick kiss. Grace thanked Myra for being there for John during a time when she admitted to being foolish. Over the following hours, we conversed, at times discussing our personal experiences individually and as a group. At one instance, Grace traded positions with Myra, enabling my daughter to embrace me. Although our encounter didn't immediately mend all fractures, it took several months before we could communicate freely without apprehension. Nevertheless, Grace and I gradually restored our father-daughter bond. Grace even joined a few counseling sessions with me. Our therapist assisted us in dealing with lingering issues from our initial encounter at the cafe, particularly trust matters. One challenging session involved my request for Grace not to sever all ties with her mother. Yes, Kelly had been manipulative and untruthful, but she was still serving a penalty and remained her mother. Upon my condition, Grace consented to meet with her under the stipulation that I accompany her during their first encounter. The meeting was difficult due to the rift among the three of us. Minimal words were exchanged, yet Grace made an effort. A week later, Kelly penned a letter thanking me for persuading Grace to meet with her. 6 months after the events unfolded, I asked Myra to marry me during a family dinner, with Tilly and Grace cheering that it was long overdue, while John shook my hand and advised me to take good care of her, words reminiscent of what I once told him upon approving Grace's marriage to John. Myra approached Kelly in prison to request permission for taking on the mother of the bride duties, which reportedly reduced Kelly to tears, but she consented. Tilly served as a charming flower girl and referred to everyone as her second mother. From then on, I was no longer called Uncle Bart, but Dad by Grace. At her wedding, I escorted her down the aisle and gave her away to a very proud groom. During the father-daughter dance, she nestled into me and murmured a gratitude prayer. That evening, the lingering hesitance I felt around Grace dissipated. Later, Grace also shared a collection of images and a letter with Kelly, expressing her thanks for granting Myra authorization to take her place. It seems Kelly has kept these mementos on her phone's wallpaper. In the aftermath of the criminal case involving Roger, Kelly Reagan managed to secure a substantial settlement for both Myra and me. Initially, Clarence was unyielding, maintaining his innocence. However, a week before our court date, he made an initial offer that Reagan deemed inadequate and offensive. Then, just 2 days before the trial, he presented another offer, which Reagan countered. As a result, Myra received a substantial six-figure settlement, while I received a more considerable seven-figure payout. Given the multi-million-dollar engineering firm we owned, this payout was insignificant compared to the potential harm of a public lawsuit. Rumors had disseminated, causing Clarence's earnings to plummet until his retirement and the sale of the company for only 30% of its worth. Using the funds from our settlements, Myra and I established an engineering consulting firm, providing both administrative and technical expertise. Within half a year, we had 5 team members working under us, traveling across the country to aid in prominent engineering projects. It turned out that one of our initial clients was Peter Pembroke. He invited us for dinner, apologized, and admitted his manipulation. He understood that the project would have failed without my engineering input coordinating delivery. Afterwards, we started receiving invitations to every major Pembroke event, regardless of project involvement. Peter found himself in a difficult position, but aimed to rectify it. We likewise sold Myra's compact house and acquired a significantly bigger dwelling nearby, offering a stunning vista of Kings Park. This was an older 5-bedroom, 3-bath property, which we dedicated over 2 years to restoring. It was a delightful phase in our lives, taking pauses only for family celebrations, our wedding, and the arrival of Byron, Grace, and Tilly's younger sibling. Our life progressed, yet I continued experiencing occasional nightmares. However, Myra remained my support throughout, always present when I needed her. Over a decade later, Byron matured into a smart 10-year-old. Tilly pursued Aunt Reagan's profession and studied law at university. On a leisurely Saturday afternoon, Grace and John were with us on our home's front deck overlooking Kings Park. Byron played Xbox with my grandson Bruce, who was the same age as him, while trying to ignore my granddaughter Hope. It was during this moment that Grace brought up her mother. "Dad," she said offhandedly yet carefully, "I received a letter from Mom this week." Although Kelly wasn't a taboo subject at home, we approached her discussions cautiously. Over the years, I had exchanged a few letters with Kelly and visited her on occasion. I was aware that she was undergoing therapy and had a supportive network in prison. Despite having 8 years left on her sentence, she was highly respected as an exemplary prisoner. Grace informed me that in one of their recent correspondence, Kelly mentioned hearing about Roger's release last month, which left us all momentarily speechless. I spent my last month quietly sipping Kraken and Coke, and inquired from Myra if there were any more details. Upon touching my hands, Myra asked Grace what else Kelly had said. Grace replied that yes, Kelly mentioned Roger had visited her. Myra passed on the message that Kelly's letter suggested Roger didn't look well due to his imprisonment experience. I planned to visit Kelly next week for further updates, but she implied their conversation was far from amicable. We conversed for a few additional minutes before I ended our talk and contacted David. Over time, he had grown to be a friend. Currently leading a significant crimes unit, he had tackled numerous intricate cases, garnering substantial media attention. "Bart, good to hear from you," he said, his voice friendly. "How's your wonderful wife?" I found myself smiling. "Myra is doing well," I hesitated. "David, I have some news. Roger has been released." A note of gravity crept into David's tone. "Indeed, I received the update yesterday. I was going to bring it up during our bowling game next week," I said, as we were part of the same team on Tuesday evenings. The report stated that he had been given permission to relocate to Adelaide. It appeared he found employment with a small company there. During his probation hearing, the panel inquired about you and whether he intended to maintain contact. You informed them that he had threatened to rot in hell for wrecking his life, yet admitted he was forced to relocate from Western Australia because of his past, since no one would employ him there. As Peter carried on, it was disclosed that prison life had been difficult for him. He often got into fights and lost most of them until he became a librarian to avoid conflict with other inmates. "Don't worry, he won't cause any problems," he said. "Thanks," I replied, expressing my relief. We talked about bowling and an upcoming barbecue for a while before I left for the table. Upon returning, Myra looked at me and inquired. I acknowledged with a nod. It was confirmed that Roger had been released and was moving to Adelaide. Understandably, he despises me. Indeed, the sentiment is reciprocated, I told the family. The rest of the afternoon was quiet, but having family around provided comfort. Later that night, I had a distressing nightmare, one I hadn't experienced in years, waking me up drenched in sweat and screaming. In my dream, Roger appeared at night and bound us all. He menaced my loved ones, causing immediate alarm in my sister Myra. I was perspiring heavily and couldn't stop rubbing my wrists as she attempted to console me. Without delay, Myra contacted our therapist, who graciously answered the call at 2 a.m., acknowledging the expense we pay him for such services. I detailed the dream, and Myra, visibly moved and holding me closely, shared her distress. Although it upset her, it offered me some relief. The therapist listened attentively as I described the dream, attributing it to the news of Roger's release and lingering fears about events more than 13 years old. We arranged a follow-up meeting, and I expressed my gratitude for his early response. When we resumed our rest, Myra verified that Byron was still asleep, an unusual occurrence. Tilly stirred briefly upon hearing our phone conversation before drifting back off to sleep. She instructed her mother to convey her affection towards me. I retreated to the bathroom and then rejoined Myra, who snuggled up to me. We engaged in intimacy for nearly half an hour. Post a brief shower, we resumed our slumber. "Do you seriously believe there may be trouble with Roger?" Myra questioned, displaying some anxiety. "I don't believe so," I responded. "I think he will depart and won't reappear in our lives again. Even if he does, you know we have measures to protect ourselves." I subtly indicated my hunting equipment securely tucked away in our closet. Myra nodded in the darkness. "That's good. I apologize if this news has disturbed you. Are you all right?" I replied, almost with a hint of sadness. Regrettably, I believe there will always be a lingering remnant from those times. Although I seldom dwell on those days now, they remain a part of my existence. When reflecting on those moments, I often dwell on the radiant blonde who unexpectedly entered my life and spared it. Myra turned her gaze towards me. "I assure you, my dear," I expressed. "Back then, I felt so powerless that I believed there was no alternative but to part ways. Had you not been by my side when I awoke, I might have resorted to the same fate again. I've realized that this situation doesn't improve without intervention. Pretending it doesn't exist won't mend it. All I can do is be surrounded by those I cherish, serving as reminders of my blessings and confide in you when I require solace to prevent myself from returning to that desolate state." Myra gave a slight nod. "I adore you, Bart," she declared. "I share the same affection for you, Myra," I replied, and then we fell asleep. Despite our path not being a perpetual fairy tale with its highs and lows, disputes and restless evenings, we navigated through it together, uncovered the blessing of a woman's steadfast affection, enabling all accomplishments, found companionship in friends accepting of my true self, and experienced family support throughout each obstacle.